Next, the change in public attitudes and state laws when it comes to gun rights and restrictions. It has long been one of the most divisive issues in America, and now several families who lost loved ones in Newtown, Connecticut, are suing the gun maker. The lawsuit was filed a day after the second anniversary of the massacre of 20 children and 6 adults at Sandy Hook Elementary School. The gunman, Adam Lanza, had already killed his mother and ultimately shot himself to death as well. Now, families of 10 of the victims are suing the manufacturer, distributor, and seller of the Bushmaster AR-15 rifle that Lanza used. The suit alleges negligence and wrongful death and argues the rifle shouldn't have been available to civilians because it's a military weapon. Nicole Hockley's 6-year-old son, Dylan, died in the Sandy Hook shooting. She is now one of the plaintiffs and spoke to PBS NewsHour Weekend.
Dylan was shot 5 times. So if we had a 10 magazine, 10 bullet limit, instead of a 30, for all I know, Dylan could be alive today.
After Newtown, the state of Connecticut did adopt some of the most restrictive gun policies in the nation. They include a ban on large-capacity magazines holding more than 10 rounds, background checks for all gun and ammunition purchases, and a prohibition on scores of assault-style weapons. Overall, a San Francisco group, the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, says 37 states have passed nearly 100 new gun laws since 2012. And some 200 lawmakers from all 50 states have formed an alliance against gun violence. But gun rights advocates, including Connecticut State Representative Rob Sampson, argue that even limiting magazine capacity will not prevent tragedies like Newtown.
You can change a magazine in literally 1 second. If I was to shoot you and say, I'm about to shoot you and I have to change magazines first, boom, I'm done, you'd never get to me in time. You wouldn't even try.
That sort of opposition has blocked congressional action on new gun legislation. And the president's nominee for U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, has been caught up in the debate for arguing gun violence is a serious public health issue. For more on all this, we turn to Carroll Doherty. He's Director of Political Research at the Pew Research Center for the People and the Press, and Joseph de Avila, who has been reporting on this and related stories for the Wall Street Journal, and we welcome both of you. Joe de Avila, why are these families suing?
Well, they're suing, they sued over this the past weekend, and what they're trying to do is basically a lot of them are asking for their day in court. What has happened is that there was a law passed in 2005 that basically has not allowed any lawsuits against gun manufacturers. There's one exception. There's one of these exceptions is negligent entrustment. So what essentially they're arguing is that these lawsuit, in order for it to go forward, they're saying that the manufacturer of the gun and the distributor and also the store that sold this gun are basically selling a weapon that's unfit for civilian use. And negligent entrustment, to give you an example, it kind of works in a way where one party gives a product to another party and trusts that product with that additional party. And if that other party commits harm to a third party, that is basically what happens under negligent entrustment. And so this act is essentially saying this is what happened here. And basically they want to have their day in court because they feel that this weapon, this AR-15, is not fit for civilians to use. And
their lawyers are arguing they think they have a good case?
They think they have a good case. It really hasn't been tested at this level before, so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. It's really going to be up to a judge to determine whether a manufacturer putting a gun into the marketplace to be purchased by the general public, whether that is included in negligent entrustment, and that's going to have to be determined by a judge.
So, Carroll Doherty, you've been looking at what's happened to public opinion on guns. What have you seen since Newtown?
Well, you saw a rise in support for gun control in the immediate weeks after Newtown, and some of that's been reversed. And actually, for the first time in our polling on this broad measure of support for gun control versus gun rights, for the first time you see significantly more, 52% favoring gun rights than gun control, 46%.
Are you able to drill down a little deeper and determine why that is?
Well, deep partisan gaps remain, but one of the interesting things is the regional shift. In the Northeast, there's still strong support and unwavering support for gun control. In the South and the Midwest in particular, support has dropped.
But is it? I mean, it's counterintuitive in a way, because one thinks, you know, after Newtown, after the shooting of Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, other highly publicized school shootings, despite all that.
Well, I mean, you still see support for individual measures, these specific measures like tougher background checks, things like that. Large support. This is the overall climate, though, and it's quite a bit different than it was in the 1990s when, you know, almost 2-to-1 support for gun control after, say, the Columbine shooting.
You know, Judy Avila, we mentioned a little while ago that the state of Connecticut passed some new restrictive gun laws. What's happened in other states, though, in the 2 years since the shooting there at the school?
Well, there's been quite a few other states that have also strengthened their gun laws. Some 37 states have done something to improve the gun laws and some of the restrictions in those states. So Connecticut is one example. They passed universal background checks. They expanded their ban on what they call an assault rifle. They've also banned the sale of large capacity magazines. New York State did some similar measures, as well as Colorado. And you've seen in other states, Alabama, for example, where some of the gun laws have been loosened there. In Alabama, they've made it easier to get a concealed carry permit. And in Georgia, for example, there you are now able to take a gun into a bar or into a church or into a school.
And what about the role of organizations like the National Rifle Association, the NRA, other of these national gun rights groups? What role have they played in seeing these laws get changed?
Well, they've been lobbying for laws such as the ones where in some of these states where they have loosened some of the regulations. They've definitely been in favor of those types of measures to make it easier for some people to either own a weapon or in some of the areas where they can carry a weapon. And certainly in some of these states that have passed stricter gun laws, they've definitely been out there lobbying against these specific measures.
Carroll Doherty, when you talk to folks about why they have different views on guns and whether the laws should be stricter or looser, do they give reasons of why their views are changing?
Well,
what do they say?
When we asked about the Senate bill, the failed Senate bill last year, or I guess in 2013, and we asked people who, you know, their reactions afterward, you know, some people who said that they supported background checks generally were a little wary of legislation. They're worried about big government, worried about slippery slope to further controls, things like that. I mean, that, you know, even the objectives that get support in principle, there's a concern about new national legislation. And
Joe, the Avila, we see most of the attention that was on the states, it's moved away from Congress.
Right, because they haven't had any luck at the federal level. And that's one of the things that some of the families have mentioned of why they wanted to bring this lawsuit in Connecticut, some of the Sandy Hook families, because they've had no success at the federal level, so they thought they'd try it in the courts.
All right, we are going to leave it there. Joseph de Avila of the Wall Street Journal and Carroll Doherty of the Pew Research Center. We thank you.